Hello and welcome to our second webinar on planning and implementing leisure and health programs. In this session we will discuss identifying and obtaining required resources, implementing individual program plans, promoting activities or programs, and delivering the activity or program. We're going to start this session by talking about identifying and obtaining the required resources for leisure and health activities and programs. Various types of resources are required to provide an activity for our clients. The resources required will vary and depend on the nature, type and size of the activity. It's necessary to determine the resource requirements of our activity and acquire these in order to effectively run our activity program. However, access to resources can be difficult, particularly to start up a new activity. It's important in the planning stage to determine your requirements and methods for obtaining these resources that you require. One way of identifying the resources required for an activity is to complete a resource audit. This is simply a checklist of items that you need for your activity and whether they are available or not. Simply make a list of all the items you need, including staff members, and then check to see if they are available or whether you have to purchase them. Once you've reserved or purchased the resources and equipment you need for your program, then you can move on to the next step. Make sure you think about all the things you need for your activity or program, such as human resources, including staff and volunteers, physical resources, such as equipment and items, and financial resources, such as money required for purchasing equipment, or for venue, hire, or coffee, tea, meals, etc. When you've determined your needs, you can then move on to the next step of making a submission for these resources. In some cases, you'll be required to get special funding to run an activity. There are various ways of funding groups, such as seeking a one-off grant or putting in a submission either to another organisation or your own. An example of this could be if you had to put in writing the proposed activity, the cost and the benefits of your activity to your clients and submit this to your manager or general manager in order to receive funds to run the activity. Once you've chosen your activity and you have the money to fund the activity, you will need to locate the right venue. You may already be working in a venue that has a room for you and you'll be able to use it for this activity or program. This will make your job a lot easier. But if you have to find an external venue, there are some extra steps you'll need to consider prior to commencing your activity. Firstly, you'll need to choose a location. This should be done by looking at your target group, their travel arrangements, public transport, the cost of the venue, and any other considerations that are specific to the group or individuals in whom the activity will be presented. Then you'll need to look at each of your chosen ideas and evaluate them to find the best and most suitable location. Then it's to be followed up by arranging and booking the specific venue that you've chosen. And it's a good idea to book the venue for the duration of the program so you don't have to make any changes to the program or the venue in the middle of the program. What do you think the benefits of recreational and leisure activities are? Well, recreational and leisure activities are essential to feeling connected within community life. Research has consistently indicated that physically and socially active recreation and leisure activities are related to higher quality of life in the general population, as well as with some people that have varying disabilities. This is especially true of activities that help people to feel part of their neighbourhood, including simple activities such as eating in a restaurant, visiting the local library, or walking in a park. There are an endless number of leisure and recreational activities that are identified across Australia. So let's take some time now and have a look at a few of these. The first type of leisure activity we're going to look at is physical recreation. Many recreational activities require the movement of large muscle groups and can be aerobic, which improves an individual's cardiovascular health. Examples of this include hiking, riding a bike, swimming, gardening, and dancing. These physically active pastimes are most beneficial if they're done routinely and regularly. And the reason that people often go back and continue to do these pastimes is they often get pleasure from doing these kinds of activities and enjoy themselves. The next activity we're going to look at is social recreation. Socially active recreation is also an important part of one's health. In fact, friendships may be the hidden factor in greater longevity. Research supports the importance of social networks in maintaining health and reducing hospitalisation of people with mental illness. Recreational activities have the potential to increase social involvement and friendships in many ways. For many recreational activities, such as playing cards or being on a team sport, there is need of involvement for others. Other recreational pursuits allow people to make new friends who share common interests. Talking with acquaintances about movies or books or about an educational class helps individuals to have a social life outside of their family and give them opportunities to grow new friendships. The next recreational type of activity we're going to look at is the social club. The social club offers opportunities for clients to socialise and go out on the weekends in a group type situation. These activities can include outings such as going to the theatre, seeing a film, going out for dinner, going bowling, or attending community and sporting events. The final type of recreational activity we're going to look at now is independent living skill development. This is usually available on a one-to-one basis or as part of a community-based group activity. Activities may include cooking, living skills, money handling, and budgeting. The aim of these activities is to promote life skills and independence of our clients. We're now going to talk about planning an off-site outing such as a bus trip. Clients and residents often look forward to these types of outings, so it's important that we are organised and that we follow the organisational policies and procedures when planning a bus trip. If you are trying a new type of outing, you will need to ensure that you complete an assessment of the outing requirements. This means you should identify all the needs and the requirements of the clients before you actually take the clients on the bus trip. Another thing you could do would be to do a mock outing before you take the clients with you. The first time I was due to drive a group of residents in the bus for an outing, I did a sample run of the outing the day before so that I was organised and not stressed on the day of the outing. Some things that you could check when you did this sample outing are the wheelchair access, equipment needed, the vehicles required, the parking space, the available facilities, the availability of meals and drinks, and the costs and staffing and volunteer requirements. If you know all these things prior to leaving, you will be able to better predict any possible issues on the outing and therefore better be able to manage them. If you're leading or participating in an off-site activity, you need to understand where the responsibilities lie. And if you're ever in doubt, ask your supervisor or manager and check your organisational policies and procedures. Once you've designed your program or activity and you've found a location and you've set the dates for when the activity will take place, you'll need to identify possible clients and distribute information about your program and activity to them. What are some ways you could promote your activity to either the general population or to clients living within your community or within the aged care facility that you work? Some examples could be handing out flyers at the location where you plan to hold the activity, sending emails to potential clients, making a presentation and presenting it to your target group, displaying your information on billboards, putting information in a local newsletter, or including the activity on the leisure and health calendar within an aged care facility. The methods of reaching your audience are many and varied, and once you've identified the target groups, you'll be able to best choose the methods of communication with them. It is important that everyone involved in the activity or the program is motivated so that they're able to maximise client participation, and therefore the effectiveness of the activity is optimised. We're going to look at the two different types of motivation in more detail now. These are intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Let's first of all look at intrinsic motivation. This means the behaviour itself is positively reinforced. Intrinsic motivation is doing something simply because it's interesting and personally meaningful. Ideally, all recreational participation should be intrinsically motivated. Increasing intrinsic motivation revolves around strategies to increase the participant's perception of success. Let's now look at some suggestions. First thing is, it's important to match the skill levels of the participants with the challenges required in the activity. You should use both verbal and non-verbal praise. This is especially important for participants who receive little recognition otherwise. Involve the participants in the decision making. People perceive that they have greater competency when they're involved in the decisions. Share the power with the participants. Confidence in one's worth is profoundly motivating. Be sure participants are ready to participate in the program. For example, they've got the required knowledge and skills to enjoy the particular activity. Enhance the appropriateness of the physical properties of the program. For example, if you are having an entertainer to an aged care facility, you want to make sure that you turn up the volume so everyone can hear it, and that the clients are all in a position where they can clearly see the entertainer. And finally, develop programs that include a planned progression. Some common examples of this could include something such as round robin game of chess, where the winner continues to play the next opponent, and then at the end of the day or the end of the session, the person that still remains could be deemed the champion. We're now going to look at extrinsic motivation. Using extrinsic motivation to promote interest in a leisure program is also common, especially when intrinsic motivation is not present. Here is a sampling of suggestions from Russell 2005 for extrinsically motivating participation in recreational programs. First of all, emphasise the status of the activity. So you could provide a membership card, mug, uniform, t-shirt, etc. Carefully employ a well-planned and well-controlled competition. Capitalise on people's desire to be part of the group. For example, you could let the residents know there's only one place left on tomorrow's bus outing. And finally, offer prizes and rewards directly associated with the activity, such as ribbons, door prizes, gifts, certificates, etc. Once you've successfully planned and designed your new activity or program, what do you need to do next? Well, you need to run your activity or program. Your plan should highlight the order of tasks and the resources you need along the way. The first step in implementing your plan is to ensure the pre-planning steps have been completed, such as a site audit or risk management assessment. Then you need to gather all your resources and set up your activity at the location you've chosen. You most likely already have the names of the clients that are attending. Then you would need to do a short induction to the premises so the group knows things such as emergency evacuation plans, general rules and responsibilities, and the plan for the activity or the day. Then probably it's a good way to commence the activity or the first session is by getting everyone to introduce themselves. Once this has all been completed, the activity can commence. The plan you have in place should be designed in a way that allows for flexibility and allows for any changes if necessary. For example, the appropriate level of participation may change as the process unfolds and new information becomes known. In such cases, the objectives might have to be reassessed. The participants might change over time, or their priorities might change. Therefore, the plan should be flexible and adaptable, taking into account information obtained during the participation of the activities and altering the approaches appropriately. Build flexibility into each activity plan you develop. Options can be developed for each activity without having to modify the participation process. It's important that we adapt our programs to the changing needs of the participants. If you think about the clientele that live within a residential aged care facility, the majority of these residents decline throughout their time within the aged care facility, so we need to be able to adapt the program to suit their needs. The participation process can be evaluated continually by monitoring the activities throughout the process and after the process has concluded. Some examples of questions to consider when planning to monitor and evaluate the process include: have we included an evaluation component to assess the ongoing activities and the results of the process? Have we established sound performance indicators for each activity and the overall process? Are we prepared to document the results of these performance indicators on an ongoing basis? Is our evaluation method consistent with our public participation process? And finally, can our process be adapted easily if new information arises? From your evaluations, you may find it necessary to adapt your program to the changing needs of your clients. For example, you may have arranged a fitness program for the local men at the local RSL. They begin this fitness program with very simple exercises that were designed to build up their strength without any high impact. They've been attending this activity program for approximately 8 weeks, and they begin complaining that it's now too easy. Your initial objectives have been reached, and it's now time to set some new objectives and goals. This means you will need to adapt your initial plan to suit the changing needs of your clients. The final topic we're going to talk about in this session is managing challenging behaviours. Working with clients and residents, you're going to come across individuals that display challenging behaviours. Some examples can include physical aggression. A client can become physically aggressive to other clients, to a visitor, a volunteer, or to a staff member. They can become verbally aggressive. They might start yelling or swearing at another client, at yourself, at a visitor. They may show or display sexually inappropriate behaviour, and they may hoard or take other clients' items. These are just a few common challenging behaviours you may come across. Evaluating the client's behaviour before taking action is a skill that takes practice. Take the time, if it's safe to do so, to understand the behaviour and to consider the trigger or sources of the behaviour. This can result in a more constructive resolution. After the event takes place, evaluate the effectiveness of your response. This can help to improve the situation next time if it arises. Look at when the challenging behaviour occurred. Behaviour is often time dependent. Time patterns may suggest possible solutions or clues for why the behaviour is occurring. For example, did it occur late in the afternoon for a client who has a diagnosis of dementia? If so, then you would need to consider if the challenging behaviour was brought on or amplified by the client experiencing sundowning. Behaviours typically occur because of some environmental signal or because the behaviour has been rewarded in the past. Try to determine the trigger of the behaviour to prevent or manage it in the future. From my experience, a trigger to a behaviour can be a wide variety of things. From my personal experience, some triggers I've seen include a resident not liking the person they're sitting next to in activity and therefore becoming verbally or physically aggressive. A resident seeing their own reflection in the mirror and not recognising themselves as an elderly person and therefore beginning to become verbally aggressive. A resident experiencing pain but unable to tell the staff that they're experiencing pain and therefore becoming physically or verbally aggressive. And finally, a resident becoming overstimulated due to the noise or the amount of activity in the room and therefore they wander off away from the activity. If you witnessed a client or a resident displaying a challenging behaviour, you must report it to your supervisor. Document what you observed in the client's progress notes. Remember, what you observe needs to be written in an objective manner. What you saw, not what you think happened. And finally, complete an incident report. If the incident involved a client displaying physical aggression to another client, this must be reported to your supervisor as soon as possible, and your supervisor will then take further action. I'd like to thank you all for your participation in this webinar. Continue now by watching this video on managing challenging behaviours.